Hi everyone, I'm Theresa V, and this is the place to be if you're a sensitive love warrior who wants to create a life you love in this world that you live to serve. The information in this video was previously recorded in one of our community gatherings. However, the angels have inspired me to share it here and now because this information is vital to us in order to move forward with as much ease, grace, and flow as possible in this new paradigm. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am just beyond thrilled to be here with you. There's a lot going on within us, a lot of energy coming up for each of us around the old stories that we would tell ourselves and how moving into this new paradigm is kicking all of those things up, all of our feelings of abandonment, isolation, not being good enough, being less than, and the opening and expansiveness of this new energy, and the feeling that there's less limitation than there used to be. So, whereas before, when we were walking in our lives, there were noticeable boundaries, right? So there were maybe walls here, energetic boundaries, and all of those things in terms of how far we could take things, how much energy we had to put into overcoming things. Those boundaries are crumbling, those limitations are crumbling. And so now we have this intuitive sense that we can do so much in almost no time, and there's a fear that's kicking up within us of what if I don't recognize myself? What if I lose everyone and everything? And so, in order to be safe, what we're doing is going back to a lot of those ideas of being less than, of being the one who's ostracized, being the one who's looked at as different. And we're actually setting up experiences in our lives that recreate those feelings of abandonment, of being different, of being less than, when what we can do right now is change our own perspective and be done with those stories. For example, if you're somebody who is the only vegetarian in your group of friends, you may approach every gathering like, oh, okay, people are going to be so put out that they have to do special dishes for me. They're going to be so upset that I'm showing up with my special needs for diet. I should just do all of the things and bring all of the food that I'm going to eat. So, while that may be true, for us to make sure that we're taken care of in a situation, to maybe bring a dish that we know we can eat just in case there's nothing else there. We can either do it from that perspective of lack of understanding, lack of empathy, lack of compassion, feeling like we're too much or putting other people out, or we can do it from the perspective of, you know what? I'm taking care of myself. I'm making sure that there's something for me to eat. And it's also something that I would love to share with my friends. And so I'm creating this dish and I'm putting all of the love into it so that everyone who eats what I've made can feel the love. Walking in also with the knowing that there will be something else there, more than likely for you to eat because the people there love you. So that's a very basic example of what this is, but we're doing this in a lot of ways. We're clinging to those old ways of ostracizing ourselves so that we can give ourselves some sort of boundary, some sort of container almost to relate to the world because we're afraid that we won't be able to relate to the world if there are no more boundaries. And this isn't a fear that's necessarily a conscious fear. This is a fear that is subconscious, is underlying. It's our ego kicking up to keep us safe. I read something that said it takes human beings 400 times of seeing something or experiencing something to build a new synapse in the brain. And that's a lot, but we say it takes 28 days to form a habit. Science says that it takes 3 to 6 months to change a behavior, and that's repeated. So if we think about it, that's probably about 400 times of experiencing the same thing to build an actual new synapse in the brain, a new way of being. The other piece is that it's been scientifically documented that if we do the same thing through play instead of through like the day-to-day grind and just having it show up in our experience, if we are playing while we are learning or we are doing something different, if we are in that energy of play, it only takes 20 times. 20 times. And so I was sitting with the angels and I was like, is this for real? And so the angels were like, this is why we tell you to be in the energy of play. This is why spirituality can be so simple, but it can also be the most difficult thing that you will have to do in your life to accomplish some of these things. Because if you're not in the energy of play, everything becomes work and it takes a lot longer and it takes a lot more effort. So think about maybe sitting for meditation. This isn't something that comes naturally to everyone, and it's not even something that works for everybody. But if it's something that we approach from the energy of, okay, here's my list, and step one is this, and step two is this, and okay, now do I go to step three yet? Am I ready? And if we approach it from that perspective and sit and say, I'm supposed to be clearing my mind. Oh, I need almond milk. Oh, I need to buy cheese. Oh, I need to buy, whatever it is. And then we get angry at ourselves for having these thoughts come in. This becomes work. We'll need to sit 400 times before we can actually let our body fully relax into the experience. And even then, meditation is a day-to-day thing. If we sit in meditation in the energy of play and say, okay, well, I read this teacher said that this kind of meditation works. So let's try it. Let's see what happens. All right, angels, come on in. All right, guides, come on in. Let's do this. And you're approaching it from a lighter energy and you're not getting as frustrated. And it's not something we're approaching from the energy of work and having to do it right and having to do it perfect. We may actually learn faster. We may actually build a new synapse faster. We may be able to relax into that meditation after 20 times versus 400. And so that to me sounds like new paradigm energy. Some of what we're seeing in our day-to-day decisions are our requirement to be more in sovereignty, our requirement to show up as more of our authentic selves. And what this means is us paying attention to where we're putting our energy and where we're conserving our energy. Our angels have been saying to us that it's time for us to really pay attention to those places where we're leaking our own energy so that we can call it back and have more accessible to ourselves in the moment to moment. And so if we are consistently making choices based on what other people think we should be doing or how we should be showing up or having to overcompensate for the potential of other people's reactions to our choices, we are losing a lot of energy in ways that don't actually serve us. It keeps relationships going that are not serving us because they're just taking and taking and taking. And so our angels want us to pay attention to this and to start to say, okay, how can you show up in this situation in your sovereignty, taking a stand in a loving way? If you, again, going back to the example of being vegetarian, if you show up to the party and you have your dish and you walk in and you say to everybody, well, I'm vegetarian and I know none of you are going to care, so I brought my own food, right? Like, how are you showing up to that party versus, oh, I brought this dish. I thought everybody might like it. And, sometimes I make extra just to make sure that there's something I can eat because I know my dietary requirements are different than other people's. Like, do you see the difference there of how we're showing up to that experience? Or maybe you don't even mention the differences at all. You just say, hey, guess what? I brought this dish because I think it's delicious and I thought everybody would like to try it. Or I would love for everybody to be nourished by the amount of love that I put into it. That's different. You're not even mentioning the difference. You're just saying, I've brought this to share. Now, that's up to you. There are some differences that are important for us to mention. And then there are some that may just be mentioned because it's our way of separating ourselves and keeping ourselves different from. So this is really about looking at our own motives. What am I trying to accomplish here? And is this the way that I really want to accomplish that? So if I think that I'm trying to accomplish sovereignty and I'm trying to accomplish being true to myself and taking care of myself, but I'm showing up confrontationally, that's actually just me leaking energy out of my solar plexus and inviting that same kind of energy back to myself, because we know the law of energy, right? What we put out comes back to us, and sometimes comes back to us tenfold. So if we come to a situation with love for ourselves and just say, hey, I brought this because we know we want to nourish ourselves, then guess what's coming back? So much nourishing energy, so much love energy, so much understanding, because we're coming from a place of sharing from love. And that's really important. There's a difference between justification and sharing. So it's very subtle sometimes, but a lot of us go into justification mode because we have for so long had to justify, especially for those of us who have our clairs open. So if there's a situation where we know, okay, well, I don't want to go to this party, I just don't feel like it's the right place for me. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, why aren't you going? Don't you like this person? Why? 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 And we don't necessarily have an answer. We're just listening to that knowing that this is not a place for me to be. But people don't accept often the answer that I just know. It just feels like I shouldn't go, right? So, what do we need to do at that point? We have had to go into justification and make up something, or just say, I feel it. And when I feel it, and then you give them 10 examples. And this is again putting so much of your energy out there just to do what you need to do anyway. So it's about, do I want to expend 10 times the energy or just live my life? And at other times, maybe there's a situation where it's like, I don't feel like I shouldn't go to this party. This doesn't feel like a place for me. And then we have a friend who says, well, why aren't you going? And this is a friend who we know has intuitive ability too, that they haven't necessarily tapped into, or they're not comfortable listening to. In that case, we can say, well, when I get this feeling or this knowing that I should or shouldn't do something, I follow it, because it's been proven over my lifetime that when I listen to that kind of guidance or that kind of knowing, everything flows, everything goes well. So now you're explaining, you're not justifying, because you are speaking to somebody who, even though they may not have tapped into their own gift, they can kind of understand what you're saying. And so there's a subtle difference sometimes, but there's also, in that sharing, we're going back to sharing of our experience. We are providing a path for somebody else to start listening to themselves, to start having it be okay to walk in their truth without having to justify and over explain to other people. That's a big thing coming up for everyone in the world, not just for the sensitives who've been working with this and struggling with this for so long. It's for us to now start standing in that truth. So whether it's, oh, I know I shouldn't eat this dip, or I know I should go to this party, it feels true to me, or I know that I should make this decision about my health because it feels true to me. Whatever those decisions are, it's time for us to just stand in them and say, well, this is my decision because this is what feels right to me. And when we do that, we show other people who may have no vocabulary for their feelings or their intuitions or their hits or their clairs. They may not know what they are, but they're starting to see that there are people who live this way, who are in touch with it. And I can tell you from personal experience, as well as from experience of what I see with my clients over and over, it's when we are in the company of someone who is truly embracing their whole self, their weird gifts, if that's what you want to say, or their intuitive abilities, or their ideas about the world that may not seem right to other people. But when they're standing comfortably in those things, it gives us permission. All of a sudden, we have a template, we have somebody to look at and say, wow, okay, they're doing this and they're so comfortable in their own skin. I can do it too. I don't need to be afraid of this in my life. That's really a blessing. And the one thing that the angels wanted to touch on before was, about the joy, about doing things in joy and having it take a lot less time. That's such a beautiful gift right now. Divine child energy is the energy of joy, is the energy of play, of innocence, of openness. And that is what this new paradigm will eventually be. It will be building. I don't want to even say rebuilding because that implies that we're going into a negative space, that we're going into a place where we'll all be like buried under rubble and having to dig our way out. And while this may be true in some cases, it doesn't energetically feel like that. It feels like, okay, there's all of this stuff that's crumbled. And now, are there any pieces here that we can use to build something new? And if not, let's bury it in the earth and let it return to its mother. And let's start fresh because we need a more crystalline energy. And so it feels like building with light. Like building, the support beams are light, and then there's crystal and all of that. So it's a much lighter energy. And this is for the world as well as in our own lives. We have looked at ourselves as a burden to other people for so long, and that's through indoctrination. That's through learning and experience. We were told we were too much. We were told to tone it down. We were told to stop daydreaming. We were told all of the things, and we started to believe them because of repetition. New synapses build after how many times of hearing the same thing? And so now what we can do is rewire our synapses. And we can do it through play. We can do it through playing into who we truly are. So, what if I don't need to justify this choice that I made? What if I can approach the answer to this question with energy of joy, energy of play? So if someone challenges me about the work I'm choosing to do in the world, what if I just move into my space of play and say, well, you know what? If you choose to sit behind a desk all day, that's great, but I choose to dance through life. However, that play feels to you, where you're not judging someone else, you're standing in your truth and you're making it an invitation. Also, you're making it a sharing of the energy that you are here to anchor. We spend a lot of time second guessing ourselves and a lot of energy thinking about other people's perspective when we can conserve that energy and just stand where we are because we've come from a place of clarity. As we live in our intuitive knowingness, as we live in our intuitive truth, we're setting an example for the children of the world that it's okay to go inside for answers because that's where you're truly connected. Like your parents may know answers, they may be able to help guide you, but ultimately you have to come here. And this is where you can be comforted when you can't necessarily rely on that from the outside world. There are situations where we do have to go inside because people outside of us can't necessarily give us what we need. And the earlier we learn this, the more well equipped we'll be to handle situations as we move forward. The more we can bounce back and forth between our inner world and our outer world without necessarily having to make a distinction. We can bring all of that information in and feel out what feels the best for us. If we come with an open heart, if we come with right intention, no matter what we're doing, it always works out. And the divine can always step in and deliver exactly what is needed. And that's the beauty. When we get so worried about what if I don't show up correctly? What if I make a mistake? What if this isn't perfect? We are losing that openness. We're closing ourselves off to the experience of being present with the divine and letting the divine work through us. And that's one of the most beautiful gifts that we have. It's just the ability to bring the divine forward and through. don't miss out on the opportunity to rest and relax and recharge and have a little vacation. We're going to be called into showing up more consistently, showing up more in our light. So it's almost like take some time to enjoy, follow the steps that are laid out in front of you. And then when you're called to the front lines, when you are called, well, they're saying when you're called to bat, when you're called to bat, you'll be ready. And this doesn't feel like a warning. It doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, there's another like great big huge tragedy coming. What it feels like is each of us called into more of our authentic voice, each of us called more into showing up on this planet, boots on the ground, as more of who we truly are, as more of our soul self, as more of the light that emanates from us. And that's a beautiful thing because that's how we're going to all, regardless of our spirituality, regardless of our past experience, we're all going to need to show up as more of who we truly are, as more of our light signature of our frequency. So let's all just take a breath together here in this space. Letting Archangel Ariel place her hands on the back of your heart, breathing in fully into her hands as she gently presses on your shoulder blades, exhaling and releasing anything that's ready to release. And Archangel Ariel wants us all to know that we are always supported. We are always guided. We are always taken care of, even before we know what we need. So just let your angels be part of your day-to-day life, and everything will flow much more smoothly. Sending you so much love, so grateful for your presence here and in this community, so grateful for the tremendous healing that I see every day here. And we'll see each other again very soon.